Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all members of the public who are watching this Cabinet meeting via the East Suffolk YouTube channel. For those of us in the conference room, there is no fire alarm test planned, so should the fire alarm sound, it will be for real. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions that will be issued to you and congregate to the right outside at the far end of the car park. Exempt confidential items. In exceptional circumstances, the Council may by law exclude members of the public from all or part of an executive decision-making meeting. We have one exempt item on the agenda this evening, which is the minutes from the last meeting. Item 1, apologies for absence. Lorraine, do you have any apologies?
No, Chair, no apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Have any Cabinet members any declarations of interest? Nope, thank you. Item 3, announcements. I don't have any announcements. Do any other Cabinet members have any announcements? Not seeing any. Thank you. 4, minutes. We have one set of minutes to approve from the Cabinet meeting held on the 14th of July 2026. If we are in agreement to accept them as a correct record, then can I have a mover, please? Councillor Daly, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Whitelock, thank you. Show of hands. Unanimous, thank you. Item 5, referrals from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There were no referrals from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on this occasion. Item 6, SIL funding bids 2026 and the infrastructure funding statement for 2025-26. I would like to invite Councillor Mark Packard, member with responsibility for planning and coastal management, to introduce the report. Thank you.
This annually presented report relates to CIL spending and reporting on developer contributions, and it contains 2 key appendices which are in themselves separate reports. Appendix A, the SIL Spending Report 2026, which demonstrates the continued investment in both small local projects as well as the larger essential infrastructure. Appendix B, the Draft Infrastructure Funding Statement brackets IFS, end of brackets, 2025-26, the Infrastructure Funding Statement, its own set of 3 appendices, brackets, the SIL report, the S106 report, and the infrastructure list, end of brackets. The layout of this document is set out within the SIL regulations. This document is currently draft and will be subject to further minor amendments. The report shows we collected a total of 7.1 million in this financial period. In addition, I was really pleased to report the recovery of a substantial overdue SIL payment from the Deben Meadows development in Melton. This year, the panel had 16 bids to consider and initially managed to approve all local SIL and local SIL play fund requests in June. SIL officers meet with Education, Health and Highways representatives on a quarterly basis to make sure there's up-to-date information on future spending plans. We have not had to borrow any money to finance proposals, and we have now agreed to ring-fence 15.2 million for future doctors' surgeries and school projects in East Suffolk. As chair of the SIL Spending Working Group, I would like to highlight that this area of work should be celebrated, as we are one of the top performing councils in England, and our SIL collections and spending are quoted by professional bodies such as the Planning Advisory Service as best practice. Do you want me to go ahead with the contents, your recommendations, sorry. So, in section 8, Cabinet are asked to 1, note the contents of the SIL Spending Report 2026, Appendix A. 2, approve the recommendations, section 7 of the SIL Spending Report of the SIL Spending Working.
Sorry, Councillor Packard, there's more to the recommendation. Do you have all the text?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so the recommendations. 1, note the contents of the SIL. I've done all that. Now I'll start from the beginning. 1, note the contents of the SIL Spending Report, Appendix A, namely the local SIL and local SIL Play Fund Awards, the 2 cases of forward funding of neighbourhood SIL, and the increased ring fencing of 15.1 district SIL by the SIL spending working group to secure health and education projects proposed to be delivered over the next 5-year period. 2, approve the recommendations, section 7 of the SIL spending report of the SIL spending working group to award or reject the requests for the district SIL funding for projects proposed to support the planned new housing developments across the East Suffolk area. 3, approve the draft infrastructure funding statement 2025 to 26, that's Appendix B, for publication subject to minor amendments to be approved through the chair of the SIL spending working group / cabinet member for planning, publication to be made by 31st of December 2026 statutory deadline.
Thank you, Councillor Packard. And I'd like to thank the SIL working group for all the time and effort and the multiple meetings. This is a cross-party group that get together to decide where the SIL money goes. And also I'd like to thank Nicola Parish, who's the officer in charge of SIL and who puts a huge amount of work into this. I'd also like to say at this point, I actually attended a play park opening last week in Beccles, where they actually had £22,000 worth of SIL money granted for a play park. And I've been invited to the Beccles medical practice next week or maybe the week after, where they're actually opening up their extra registrar rooms and training rooms. Registrar rooms, yes, just before you become a doctor, apparently you're a registrar. I learn all sorts of things in this job. Are there any members of cabinet that wish to debate, please? Oh, sorry, I need a seconder. Councillor Whitelock, thank you. Councillor Bevan, would you like to speak?
Yeah, we've done really well on this. It seemed to, my readings right, you've got sort of £19 million in the coffers raised from SIL, 14 million ring fenced and so on. But I'm just worried we're killing the goose that lays the golden egg, because SIL amounts are going down principally because of less house sales. Our level of SIL, our SIL rate is about double of the rate of Mid Suffolk and Bayburn, and Ipswich and West Suffolk don't have SIL at all. And what's happening is that developers are reducing affordable housing rates because of non-viability, and viability is affected by high SIL rates. So there's a danger here that although we're doing great work with raising SIL, we may be reducing the affordable housing. And we've seen one application come in for 899 homes with no affordable on at all because of viability issues. So it's just a caution. Well done for getting this amount of money, but let's be careful how, the ramifications of it.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I'll make is whenever we have these big planning applications, what people are worried about is the infrastructure. And where are we going to get money for the infrastructure? And, okay, we may have, we're well ahead of a lot of other people, but it does mean that we have been able to put some good infrastructure projects in. In a sense, the affordable homes is really a government problem. They should be addressing that, I think. And they've certainly put some money aside, wanting councils to build council houses now, which is affordable homes. But and I take your point, and we'll keep that in mind.
Councillor Candy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Are there still occasions when developers don't pay any SIL at all?
Stand corrected, but I know in my own patch, Brightwell Lakes don't pay any SIL. And that was agreed because there's a huge amount of infrastructure to put in. So there are occasions, yes.
Councillor Langdon-Moore.
Thanks. Just under financial implications, that's 4.1. Ensuring the right infrastructure is delivered at the right time, and then critical and essential infrastructure. The thing that comes to mind as this is great, thank you, but in terms of climate adaptation and resilience infrastructure, such as some of the areas of flooding that I've experienced in the past, that those developers have funded SIL, but whether SIL can also consider adaptation financing to make things more resilient. I can think of an example in Fram where I think a road could be undermined by flooding in future, and that will require probably highways to fund that repair, which will be in the millions. And whether SIL can be used to mitigate things that could happen in the future. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said in my statement, the officers do meet with highways, council's highways department on a quarterly basis. And so any issues like that do come up, we have financed with SIL with mainly, I have to say, bicycle and footpaths. But if highways felt that there was something needed in an area, then okay, they should present it to us. But in general, what I would say is when you have these planning applications, the highways business and the flooding business is all debated at length before any application can go through.
Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I'd just like to say congratulations. I think it's great that we're raising enough SIL money to actually pay for the infrastructure. Where else is it going to come from? The ferries, someone has to do it, and it ought to be the developer. In terms of viability, well, that's a movable thing, isn't it? What level of profit is considered viable or inviable? And if developers want maximum profit at the expense of the infrastructure and the civilized space they leave behind in the housing developments, then that needs to be questioned. So I think it's right that we're asking for SIL at a proper rate, and I hope neighbouring authorities will follow suit.
Councillor Whitelock?
Nothing. There it is. Yes, I just want to say I'm on the panel for SIL, and what started a few years ago as being a bit of a mystery to me has become clearer, and I can see the absolute value of SIL, just as you've said in Beccles, but all over the district. The contributions that SIL makes to particularly play parks, doctor surgery, etc., is hugely valuable. And I've gone from finding it a bit of a mystery and yet another meeting to actually finding it very rewarding. But a lot of that has to do with the way it's managed by the officers, who are very patient with us, I must say, and do explain things very well, and are very happy to take things away and double check things. Because with such large sums of money, we're very anxious as a panel to get it right. So altogether a good thing and a good team.
Thank you. And Nicola is sitting right behind you, Sarah. And could I also just say at this point, obviously we do have some housing that does go up that has no SIL. So Beccles Worlingham Garden neighbourhood, for one, there are areas in Lowestoft that get no SIL. So the developers don't pay SIL because they say it's not viable for them. But then the parish councils can come in and actually get that SIL specifically for projects, that infrastructure projects that do need to be delivered. So any other member of Cabinet wish to speak? Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, Leader, you're right. There is no SIL on affordable housing, but if a viability assessment rejects the affordable housing, there is no affordable housing and there is no SIL on it. So it has an effect on affordable housing, the SIL rates. SIL rates in my ward are extremely high. Yeah, these projects are good, but I question 50,000 for a fitness room in the canteen and 50,000 for the scout hut, which is not really used in my ward. I question whether that's really good value for money. I'll probably get it in the net from my ward and say, okay, but I think it's the truth.
And the panel go through all those things. Councillor Packard, did you want to respond? You look like you're ready to.
Yeah, no, it does sound like quite a lot of money, I have to say. And to be honest, we don't get as councillors, we don't get involved in how much each person pays, and that is something that could be looked at. but we are there to help distribute the money properly. And, you know, I must congratulate Nicola and her team. You know, if we've given money to a project, if the project hasn't started or is not going well, we take that money back. You know, and if the money's not used for some reason or there's a delay, we get the money back. So there is a really good control after we've made the decision. But I really can't comment on Councillor Bevan's what he said about how much everybody pays.
Thank you. Comments from other members in the room. Councillor Ashdown, good evening.
Yes, thank you, Leader. All I should like to say is, having sat on the SIL working group for many years now, we do go through things very, very thoroughly, and it is completely cross-party, and we work very, very well together, all of us. And Nicola and her team do a fantastic job. And I should like to say on behalf of the opposition members, thank you, Nicola, for all your work. And I know that the monies that we allocate are going to be well used.
Councillor Noble.
That's better. Yeah, just to concur with what's been said, actually, I'm also on the SIL working group, the other people in this room, and I also found it a complete mystery when when I first joined. And as Sarah just said, Councillor Whitelock, I find it really quite rewarding now, and like everyone else has said, it's gone through with a tooth comb. And Nicola and Ursula and the team are amazing and explain things so well to us. And it's all just so very carefully done in such detail that it's always nearly money well spent, and if not, as Councillor Packard said, it can be claimed back, or you know, it's very carefully organised. So anyway, thank you to everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, I very much welcome the funding that we had for two of our projects in our ward, which was at Bucklesham and in Trimley St Mary. Excellent play equipment, so, and long may it continue.
Thank you. Any questions from members online? I can see a hand up. Is that you, Councillor Jepson? Good evening.
Yes, good evening. I hope you're all well. I always hate agreeing with Councillor Bevan, as he knows, but I think what Councillor Bevan says is actually a good point. We all know the benefits of what SIL delivers, and we've had two in our ward, particularly level 2, and I think it's fantastic. But I think David does make a good point. But I think the point he makes, it would be good to see if there was any data that suggests that housing developers are put off by the SIL, apart from anecdotal. But I don't think it's a point that should be ignored. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Jepson. Did anybody want to respond to Councillor Jepson? Mark, Nicola? No? No? Right, okay. Councillor Byatt, good evening.
Good evening, Leader. And yeah, thank you for an excellent report. And I think it's really, really pleasing to see that we are able to spend so much money that we have control over, or projects we have control over. Apologies for my late arrival. Are we also dealing with the many pages of red, green and amber items as well? I just wanted to comment on those. Thank you.
Go on then. What is your comment, please?
Yeah, my comment is sort of a question, Leader. I know that quite a lot of the red flagged up projects are those where we are asking for cooperation from the county council. Are there any difficulties with the county council in engaging with us to make sure that these projects are actually going to be fulfilled? Thank you.
That sounds like a loaded question. Who would like to take that? Nicola.
I think Nicola should take it.
Nicola, would you like to speak?
We actually meet with the county council monthly, and we advise them of which developments are coming forward, which ones are commencing, and speak to them about their infrastructure needs. In fact, this meeting is so regular and so advanced. We're looking at the 5-year plan that they have for delivering their projects, which is what the ring fenced sum relates to. So I would say it's fairly well planned. Maybe with walking and cycling projects, we have our East Suffolk ones, but we don't necessarily know how much the county council's projects will cost at this early stage. So there is some information that we might not know, but for the most part, we can plan ahead, and we know roughly what's expected in each year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Is there no other members of Cabinet wish to speak? Councillor Packard, would you like to sum up or add anything else?
I'd just like to thank everybody who was on the committee. We did meet on a regular basis at a quite tight schedule and had to make decisions. And I think we made some very good decisions. We did turn down some applications, and they maybe have to come back again. But I'd like to thank everybody and recommend this to be approved.
Thank you. And I believe SIL happens once a year, and I think it's about to open again for next year. Is it not?
April 2027 is the next bid round.
Okay, and our lives are whizzing in front of us. Okay, so can I have Cabinet, are you minded to approve? If so, show of hands, please. Okay, we have a majority. How many abstentions? 1 abstention, Councillor Bevan. Thank you very much. Okay, item 7. Thank you, Nicola. Item 7, review of temporary accommodation strategy. I would like to invite Councillor Bevan, Cabinet Member with responsibility to housing, to introduce the report. Thank you.
I'm pleased to present the draft temporary accommodation procurement and placement strategy 2026 to 2029. This strategy updates our previous approach and responds to the significant pressures we're experiencing across the homelessness system. Demand for temporary accommodation has increased substantially in recent years, and at the same time, rising costs and our reliance on nightly paid accommodation are creating increasing financial pressures for the council. This strategy sets out a more proactive and sustainable approach. It focuses on preventing homelessness wherever possible, increasing the supply of suitable accommodation, reducing reliance on costly nightly let paid and out of area placements, and improving outcomes for residents. It also strengthens our ability to meet our statutory duties while improving financial resilience. By investing in more cost-effective accommodation options and improving flow through the system, we aim to provide better quality, more local accommodation for households experiencing homelessness. Ultimately, this strategy is about ensuring that some of our most vulnerable residents have access to safe, suitable accommodation while creating a temporary accommodation system that is sustainable for the future. The recommendations are that Cabinet 1. Approves the temporary accommodation procurement and placement strategy 2026-2029 attached as Appendix E. 2. Gives delegated authority to the Head of Housing in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing to make amendments and update the documents as required in response to changes in legislation, operational feedback or best practice. 3. Agreed an annual review of progress against the strategy. An action plan is reported to the Cabinet for Housing.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Candy, thank you. Councillor Deacon, good evening. Are you online?
I am. Hello. Good
Hello.
evening, everybody.
Good evening, Councillor Deacon. Would you like to say a few words as the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, please?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's a very, very lengthy strategy. It was well debated and well delved into, and I think everybody got an awful lot out of it. You can see on your papers the suggestions that we made and recommended that the Cabinet accept the strategy, and we said that we would report be noted and that Cabinet be recommended to approve the temporary accommodation procurement and placement strategy, subject to the position of a glossary being reviewed and a hyperlink used in the e-version if possible, that the Cabinet and member officers take account of the committee's comments and suggestions, particularly in relation to the provision of more temporary accommodation in the south of the district, and an update be provided on progress in a year's time. And finally, that a full breakdown be given to the committee at its next meeting in relation to how long the people generally spent in temporary accommodation before being housed. And I think and hope that the report has taken that on board. I have to say, one of the biggest concerns I think we had was the almost total lack of any temporary accommodation in the south of the district, where in fact 12% of those people that need that accommodation actually live in. And I really do hope that that can be addressed very quickly, because it is a big, big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Bevan, do you want to respond to any of that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Deacon. It was a very, very good scrutiny. I think very good session, very thorough. We have certainly got the message about TA in South. In fact, it's in the report anyway. How the demand there and the resources are not there because it was due with the fact that Waveney kept their housing and Suffolk Coastal didn't. We are actively still looking, and as you know, we've talked today about that ex-care home in Trimley is back on the market, so we'll have a look at that again. There are a few problems with the deeds on that one, but we're actively looking there, and there are other options that you know about that we're working with Flagship, one of their redundant buildings, we're hoping to use as TA and so on. So we're actively doing it. The good news is related to homelessness is rough sleeping is a particular target of the new Prime Minister, and we're expecting over £1 million in funding for rough sleeping, and we really hope this will kickstart our project to get these pods organised to bring them to help certainly rough sleepers, and that will also help homeless people, because the real tragedy is that when people become homeless, they can't stay in their community where their family and support network is. They can't stay where their job is. The kids can't stay in the school. We must be able to keep people in those networks. Otherwise, homelessness causes all the other problems, and it just gets worse and worse. So thank you for your support, and let's keep working together on it.
Thank you. Any other members of Cabinet wish to speak? Councillor Candy.
Thank you very much. I did write a note and I forgot to say where I found it from. However, it's in temporary accommodation, obviously. Somewhere in part 1, it says when you're accommodating families, it actually says, and I did write it down, while adjoining rooms are desirable, they're not mandatory. Are we talking about children within these families, or families and families? I was just a bit concerned that it's actually seemed okay to accommodate children in down a corridor from their family.
I obviously don't remember that paragraph and where it's from. So
You've got here part 1, 1.2, but I'm not actually sure which part 1.
if you could email me the actual,
it does actually say that.
Yeah. If you could email that to me, then I'll pass it over to the officers and they will get back to you on it.
All right. It just concerned me that as it's a new document, we might still be rubber stamping, not keeping families together.
Councillor Bevan, it's actually on page 168.
Oh, thank you, Leader.
You're very welcome. And we do have Fern supporting online.
Yep. Okay, get Fern in then.
Excellent.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. I'm happy to respond. We always keep families together. We do try and accommodate families close to the areas where they present to. It's not always possible, depending on their needs, of course. And sometimes we have to place families outside of East Suffolk, and that's one of the things we're trying to reduce to enable people to remain within the support networks, school and work environments. But we never separate families. I'll have to have a look at the specific line that you're referring to, but I'm happy to confirm and reassure colleagues that this is not something that we ever practice or place people in separate accommodation. But happy to look into it specifically if there is something that you'd like me to clarify.
I think what councillor Candy is referring to is on page 168 on our document. It might be page 4 on yours, Fern. Bullet point 1.2, which says in addition to the previously mentioned standards, family rooms must also adhere to the following requirements. And additional
Is that
beds should be
within the
provided. I
standard
think that's
document?
And then it goes on to say.
temporary accommodation standards document. Yes, Fern. Go on, Jan.
Okay.
Sorry, I will send it to you, but then it does go on to say, while adjoining rooms are desirable, they are not mandatory.
The accommodation that we provide doesn't normally have adjoining rooms. The only instances where we would use adjoining rooms is potentially if we have to place a large family with more than one adult and children in a bed and breakfast setting for a very short period of time and in an emergency. All other accommodation that the council provide is self-contained. Because we want to make sure that families are not placed in what is classed as bed and breakfast. So the bed and breakfast provision would only be used, and the adjoining room scenario would be where there is a placement in bed and breakfast for 1 or 2 nights, particularly when families come through out of hours and we don't have readily available accommodation, but they would immediately be moved into self-contained accommodation, and certainly within 6 weeks, which is the time restriction that we have, and the length of time. We are very much focus and monitor this on a weekly basis to ensure that any families placed in bed and breakfast are moved to self-contained units. But the purpose of the standards document is particularly important because what we want to ensure is that if we were to procure accommodation or were to use accommodation, the providers are very much aware of what the council's expectations are. So the sharing or the linking rooms will only apply in those scenarios, and for emergency accommodation over a night or 2, certainly not something that we would look to use on a long-term basis.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I'll just add to that this is really only applying when people are in bed and breakfast or nightly let. And also we really emphasise that mainly for single people. We try not to have families in that situation. And if you look at the dashboards, you'll see that is monitored, the amount of families that are in nightly let or bed and breakfast.
So Candy?
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. It did help, but maybe just a little tidying up of that paragraph would help.
Okay, any other members of Cabinet wish to speak? Any other members in the room? Councillor Ashton?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just really a question for councillor Bevan. When Access Community Trust went into liquidation earlier on in the year, they had properties they were looking at, which we brought to your attention, which could be used for some of our accommodation. Is that still ongoing?
Fern can answer that better. It's a movable feast.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So when Access Community Trust collapsed, there were a few buildings that could potentially would have been considered by the council. I won't be naming those buildings, of course, but there were a couple of buildings in Lowestoft which we looked into, one of which was in terrible disrepair and couldn't be used as supported accommodation or indeed temporary accommodation. And the owner of the property was not willing to work with the council or providers to deliver the type of accommodation that we needed. In addition, we explored another building that Access Community Trust had engaged with developers, and we brought in the support from our planning team to have those discussions. However, that didn't progress because of the layout of the building and the plans that had previously been approved or not approved for that particular building in Lowestoft. So all other buildings were for community use only and not suitable for the use as temporary accommodation. There weren't any other buildings that were available. The only one that we are engaging with a private landlord would be to continue some of our sleeping off the street accommodation, and we're hoping to achieve a lease agreement with a provider that will deliver the support within the accommodation and that is in Lowestoft, which is where we were delivering some of the services that unfortunately collapsed as a result of Access liquidation. And I'm hoping that those beds will come active and available in the next couple of 3 weeks.
Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, we're always on the lookout for reasonably priced accommodation that we can use in the situation. But bear in mind that our standards are obviously high because we cannot provide substandard accommodation to anybody.
Any other questions from members in the room? Any questions from members online? Councillor Byett.
Thank you, Leader. Just first thing I wanted to amend the Appendix B in terms of the potential savings. That's a really interesting document there, but it's really a question based on the decriminalisation of rough sleeping. Has that in any way changed our obligation to rough sleepers? In other words, where do they sit in the priority for sorting out any accommodation for them? Thank you.
I'll defer to the expert Fern on this, but rough sleepers, unless they're vulnerable, are not actually a statutory obligation. So Fern will give you the definite answer.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan, and thank you for the question. We do work with rough sleepers very closely, and we follow guidance in as far as that when we verify a rough sleeper, we do assess whether they have a priority need under the legislation, of course, to establish whether the council owes them a duty under an interim duty under Section 188 of the Housing Act, which means that we have to provide temporary accommodation for that individual. However, because we have a number of bed spaces that can provide the support, and what we're trying to achieve is end rough sleeping, something that we are obviously trying to plan for as part of our Ending Homelessness Action Plan that hopefully will come to Cabinet for approval and implemented by December. We try and provide or offer accommodation to everyone that we verify or that we come across, regardless of whether they have a priority need or not. So we have rough sleeping initiative beds across the north and the south of the district. We have some bed spaces in the south in Felixstowe, and we have some bed spaces in Lowestoft. We've just increased those as a result of the current demand and available bed spaces. So we try and make offers of accommodation regardless of whether applicants have a priority need under the statutory regulations, because we understand that although there is a need for us to provide that accommodation or have an obligation legally, we have a moral responsibility to make sure that rough sleepers are off the streets and that they can continue to be supported in a suitable environment that will hopefully achieve, an end of homelessness and find them suitable accommodation in the long term. And that might be a pathway of supported housing or general needs accommodation, depending on the needs. But we certainly try and provide accommodation offers to those that are willing to engage and accept those offers of accommodation, because we know that not all rough sleepers want to engage or accept offers. Sometimes when we've triggered severe weather emergency protocol and have made offers of accommodation, we have found that some of those rough sleepers choose to remain on the streets, but we continue to make those offers. So to answer your question, yes, there is a statutory duty that the local authority need to test against. However, we do make discretionary offers and will continue to do so under the different pathways that the council can work through.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fern. I'd just like to applaud the fact that we're going beyond the statutory minimum and doing our utmost for all our residents, even those that are rough sleeping. It's very important that we hold the line of decency and civilization and go beyond statutory minimums and might still leave people homeless. So yeah, I just would like to applaud that.
Thank you. Councillor Foley, good evening.
Good evening, Leader. Thank you. As Councillor Bevan probably know, I'm ecstatic when I was reading this, actually, to see the focus on the extra temporary accommodation looking at the south of the district. But there was one thing that I did notice, and I'm finding quite recently, there's a lot of people that are in the temporary accommodation who are holding back the process by being refusing several properties one after the other until they get what they want, so to speak. Is there something we can do to incorporate this into, it's basically flat blocking, isn't it, really, rather than bed blocking, by people who are pushing hard? Is there something we can do to build into it?
I'm happy to answer that question if that's okay.
Go ahead, Fern. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Foley, for your question. So the Housing Act is very clear that when somebody that's in temporary accommodation is made a reasonable offer, they have one offer and one offer only. If they make a refusal, we would look at the reasons as to why that accommodation is being refused. So, for example, if a refusal is made on the grounds that someone wants to live by the sea and would like to have a garden, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to have it, we would look at the reasons as to why they refuse it. And if that offer is refused and it is unreasonable following a full assessment, then the council can discharge its statutory duty. So if, for example, we have accepted a main duty for a family that's residing in temporary accommodation and we have identified a property that is suitable for their needs, is affordable, and the family suits the property in every way, we would make that formal offer in writing, and the family would be given the opportunity to accept it or refuse it. If they refuse it and it's unreasonable, we would discharge the duty, and therefore the council will no longer have a duty to accommodate, and the temporary accommodation will come to an end within a reasonable time. So the legislation is there to support those refusals, and there shouldn't be refusals that are unreasonable being accepted as purely a refusal and then another offer being made. So if there are any specific cases that you're concerned about, I'm more than happy to look into them. But overall, that is the legislation and what the council will apply for each refusal. We would look into it very carefully and then determine whether it's reasonable or not.
Thank you, Fern. I'll drop you over an email with the specific cases and.
Of course. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fern. There are, quite frankly, a lot of people sharing bedrooms that they shouldn't share bedrooms, people safer surfing, people in houses having to move away from their community, as we mentioned before. It's a sad fact and sad reality of the housing crisis in East Suffolk, and there is only one solution, and that is to build more social homes that people can afford to live in.
Councillor Jepson, good evening.
I have spoken already, Leader. Thanks for remembering that contribution. A question for Councillor Bevan. Excuse me. It's great news that Labour are offering finance for homelessness, but under any central government before, sometimes the money they offer looks encouraging, but it doesn't take account of the amount of money we may need to spend. So have we been able to look at the funding that we think they're going to offer, but understand if we will have to match fund any of that? It's not that I'm not supportive of it, but from experience, I know sometimes you end up having a larger bill than you realised because they will only pay part of the offer, so to speak. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, I mean, we won't count our chickens until they're actually hatched. You're quite right to be suspicious of central government on that score. But we have been told there is an extra 400 million, which I think is actually extra money, not just regurgitated other money. And we have had a letter from government saying that we will be getting the extra funding, which I think from memory was over £1 million. There will be some element of match funding because there already is with Rough Sleepers. We put in some money ourselves, but I think, it will be a good project and I'm looking forward to it.
Any other questions, debate? Fran, I'd just like to thank the team because SWEP is rather a difficult one with the 5 heat waves we've already had this year. It's also going to happen when the cold comes in. Is it 3 days in a row over or under a certain temperature? And then our housing officers are expected to find every homeless person accommodation. That is very challenging across the whole district. As has already been said, most of our accommodation is in the north, so it is challenging for the south, and then that does mean people move out of their communities and their support networks in order to go into accommodation we've got. Please be assured, Councillor Bevan and the housing team are all over this, and as soon as they can find some properties, they will engage with them and try and bring them on board. I'd also like to say that there are telephone numbers for the homeless team. If you come across anybody sleeping rough in a car or on the street or in a tent or anywhere else, the officers are available quite extensively for you to get into contact with, but they do have to go out and make sure these people are homeless. That sounds a bit hard, but some people actually are presenting as homeless, but when the housing team try to find them, they can't find them because they're not where they say they are going to be. And they do have to be seen to be homeless before we can actually help them. If there's nobody else, Councillor Bevan, have you got anything further to say?
No, only to commend the housing team. A really good report. We did delay it a little bit for scrutiny, but now we can go full guns, and with government backing, we can really get this on the street.
Right.
Okay, Fern, before Councillor Bevan condemns this, I'm just going to go to the vote, and I would like to commend this to Cabinet. So can I have a vote, please? Show of hands. Fern, you have a unanimous yes. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Item 8, approval of a revised tenancy agreement for East Suffolk Council tenants. Councillor Bevan.
This report seeks approval for a revised tenancy agreement for East Suffolk Council tenants. The tenancy agreement is a key document that sets out the rights and responsibilities of both the council and our tenants. The agreement has been comprehensively reviewed to ensure it reflects current legislation, regulatory requirements, and modern housing management practices, while also making it clearer and more accessible to tenants. The revised agreement has been developed in consultation with both housing staff and tenants, with feedback helping to shape the final document. Tenant consultation showed strong support for the proposed changes, with 78% of respondents agreeing with the revisions overall. I'm therefore pleased to recommend that the Cabinet approve the revised tenancy agreement and the associated recommendations set out in the report.
Would you like to read the recommendations, please?
I thought that was the recommendation, isn't it? If not, give me something else to read out. Right. Recommendations that Cabinet 1 approves the revised tenancy agreement attached to Appendix A. 2 authorises the Head of Housing in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing to complete the statutory process required to vary the tenancy agreement and implement the revised agreement. 3 authorises the Head of Housing in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Housing to make any minor amendments to the tenancy agreement that arise as a result of the statutory consultation to comply with a change in the law and or change in regulatory requirements, and to correct any typographical errors.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Daly, thank you. Any members of Cabinet wish to discuss? Any other members in the room? Councillor Ashdown?
Yes, just thank you to this, and it's nice to see that we have recommendations within there that ensure that our tenants understand what they need to do to look after our properties for the benefit not only of themselves, but the local community and their neighbours.
Thank you. Any councillors online wish to speak? Councillor Byett.
Thank you, Leader. And I wanted to thank officers, particularly for the easy read guide and also the thoroughness of the rest of the document, which, as you will know, I've already put to good use in an email earlier on today, But in all seriousness, I think, you know, this easy read guide, no one can make any mistakes about what's expected of them. And I think that's really, really valuable when we, as was just said, about looking after our properties. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Byatt. And also, I'd like to thank the officers for the work they're doing with engaging with tenants more widely. I think it's quite challenging trying to get tenants to actually engage with us, and some tenants don't like to let us in their properties to see how they're living, for example, if there are issues that they don't want us to address. So I'm pleased to see that the tenants, the officers are actually going to be going out doing some tea cake and quiz events to make it a little bit more fun for the tenants to come and engage with us, rather than think that we're getting them out to basically grill them. And hopefully Councillor Bevan, with his happy smiling face, will be joining us for some of these events. Councillor Daly, you haven't spoken yet. As a seconder, would you like to speak?
No, I won't add any more. I think it's all been covered. Thank you.
Councillor Bevan, anything to add?
Yeah, don't put a damper on it really on my own report, but it is very tricky we have some very challenging tenants, and we can't just simply evict people because then become a statutory responsibility for us, and we can't just chuck people out. So we have to work really hard with some people to try and get them to behave in an appropriate manner and fashion and look after our property, which we're concerned about. Not saying that, you know, we're going to let things go, but just saying it's really hard work sometimes to maintain these standards. Having said that, we are doing it.
Thank you. Can we have a vote, please? All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fern. Item 9, housing regulation, quarterly update to Cabinet. Councillor Bevan.
This report provides members with a strategic overview of the housing regulation requirements registered providers. Am I on the right one? Yeah. Have to meet and what ESC is doing to ensure it meets them. It also details historic and recent findings, provides a status update, and explains what officers are doing to develop an improvement plan and its ongoing commitment to communicating its progress and prevention of future issues with the regulator for social housing. Members will be aware that the Council was subject to a previous regulatory notice due to a breach of the home and rent standards by the regulator of social housing in May 2022. Following a further self-referral, the RSH issued a regulatory judgment on 30th July 2025, which gave East Suffolk Council a C3 grading on the basis that they found serious failings in the way ESC was delivering outcomes in the safety and quality standard. These quarterly updates are required as set out in paper ES/1432, which was presented full council on the 25th of January 2023. At this meeting, recommendation 6 stated, members note that quarterly updates will be presented to Cabinet detailing the progress against the compliance and rent improvement plans. This report follows ES2696, the previous quarterly update to Cabinet in June 2026. This report is provided for information purposes only. There is no requirement for Cabinet to make a decision. The recommendations are that Cabinet 1 notes the information contained within this report and endorses the work of the Housing Service, who are working towards ensuring the Council is compliant with the regulator of social housing consumer standards, including the safety and quality standard. I so move and call for seconder.
Seconder, please. Councillor Packard, thank you. Members of Cabinet wish to debate? Okay, I'd just like to say that I think I mentioned this last month or maybe the month before, the Housing Improvement Oversight Board, which Heather has set up, now meets regularly, and members sit on that board, so we can actually see progress being made on improvements that the council is making. And also we do have the dashboards, which shows improvements and maintaining of improvements across the whole of the housing stock. So I would want to thank Heather and everybody that puts all that effort into keeping all those dashboards and everything up to date. Do I have any other members in the room wish to speak? Any members online? Councillor Byatt?
Thank you, Leader. And again, congratulations to the housing team on this. It's just really sort of a technical question. I see that we've got phase 2 of OWAB's law, and it's mentioned in here, but something about, if you bear with me, it was about resourcing. Do we have enough resources in place to make sure that our action plan will be fulfilled on time? Thank you.
Yes, we think we do. This is quite a challenge because you have to respond within 2 weeks, I think it is, to report damp and mould, quite rightly. But that means that we have to have spare people around to respond that quickly. We are introducing new software on the repairs department. That is still work in progress, but that's coming together. And we've got new appointments in the repairs department who are looking at this specific problem. So I think we're okay, but the whole point is to keep monitoring it, and using the dashboards is very useful.
Thank you, David.
Any other members online wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Councillor Packard, you haven't spoken. Would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that since we took control of the council and with Councillor Bevan's really acting very, very fast, we've turned this around. And, you know, it's good to have these quarterly updates, but we inherited quite a mess. And Councillor Bevan was always very critical in opposition. And now that he's taken control of it, I think he's really proved that you can make a difference. So I would recommend this.
And Councillor Bevan has an amazing team behind him doing all the work. Councillor Bevan.
I was about to say you better say that to Heather, not me, because she's the one who's really turned this whole compliance thing round, and she was doing that before we were even elected. But it's really good to have someone like Heather around. What we would have done without her, we were in a real mess, but she's getting there. Hopefully, just before we go back to the electorate for the next lot of elections, we will have nearly got there. But we've done all the hard work, so whoever takes over this housing department will have something that's worth fighting for.
Was that your summing up, Councillor Bevan?
Yeah.
Could we have a vote, please? All in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Fern, are you still there?
No, it's left.
Nope, okay, thank you. Right, that was unanimous, thank you very much. The next item is the exempt minutes. If nobody has any changes to the exempt minutes, we can actually vote for them in this session. Otherwise, I will have to close the session. Does anybody have any amendments to the exempt minutes? All in favour, please. Oh, sorry, I need a proposer first. I got excited there. Proposer. Councillor Bevan, seconder, Councillor Candy, all in favour. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and the next meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 6th of October at East Suffolk House. Thank you very much.